Greetings, Facebook Live. Welcome to WKYC's three-point play. Happy March 16th, 3/16, Stone Cold Steve Austin Day. I'm Ben Axelrod. This is Matt Florjancic. A lot going on in the world of sports. March Madness, the NCAA championships of wrestling here in Cleveland, where you were at today. But as always, our world revolves around the sun that is Berea and the Cleveland Browns. You were in Berea yesterday.
Hey, at least it's rising this time.
It is rising
it's not
now.
setting.
We'll see how long the sun is up. You were in Berea yesterday. That's why we didn't have an episode yesterday. But the Browns introducing not only Tyrod Taylor, Jarvis Landry, and Demarius Randall, but their gaggle of free agent signees: Carlos Hyde, TJ Carey, Chris Hubbard. Yeah. They've added 10 players in the last week alone. Just about a week ago from this time is when it all started. You were there covering it for us at WKYC.com, Matt. Let's start with Tyrod Taylor, hearing the Browns starting quarterback for 2018 speak for the first time.
You know what? I thought he came off extremely well. I thought he and Jarvis Landry both did a phenomenal job handling the press conference. And truth be told, it was nice to see guys that were excited about being Cleveland Browns. Right. They were smiling. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've seen a Browns player smile in 2 seasons.
Yeah,
I mean,
not a lot of reasons to smile.
Right, but they were genuinely excited about being in Berea. I mean, literally, Jarvis Landry had to stop himself from smiling to answer questions,
right.
and Tyrod wasn't very far behind him. So I took that as being a good thing. They're excited about being here, and that for sure is of great importance, because when you're 1-31 and you're 0-16, to get players to come in here and to be excited about it, that says something about their character. I was really taken by his presence in the room. Like, you could sense something when he walked into the room, and him and Jarvis Landry both. Biggest takeaway, he doesn't really care about the bridge quarterback label.
Right.
The guys who took more offense to it were Hugh Jackson and John Dorsey. They took offense to it, but bottom line is, if he comes in and wins games, I don't care if he's a bridge. I don't care if he's, the next future quarterback. If he wins games, it's all that matters.
Yeah.
And that seems to be his sticking point, is he's all about doing what's going to be necessary to get wins. We've heard a lot of quarterbacks come in here and talk about wins, but not know how to get them. Tyrod's been in situations where he's known how to get wins, and hell, he led a playoff team last year.
Yeah.
So that's all good signs pointing for the Browns.
It's kind of that thing we talked about back on Monday when we first had the chance to talk about these trades.
Not necessarily you in this room, but
that's the difference, right, between going from a 21-year-old quarterback to a 29-year-old starting quarterback. That 8-year age gap makes all the difference in the world. You could even just see it the way Tyrod Taylor wears his suit. There's just a different presence about him when it comes to the quarterback position, and obviously what he was able to do in Buffalo. He was a Pro Bowler in 2015, named an alternate. He's not going to set the world on fire. He's not Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or in that class of quarterback. But this is a legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL, and it's been a while since the Cleveland Browns have been able to say that, especially this early in a year.
I know. It was refreshing to hear from him yesterday and hear that he's all about the process. And look, he wasn't talking about mid-September for the regular season opener. He was talking about getting to work on April, I think, 16th is when they're allowed to start their workouts. That is music to the ears of Browns fans. They need and they want a quarterback willing to work, because he's seen the process work before. Deshaun Kaiser was learning the process and working at the same time. Not the case now. You have a guy that knows what a process looks like. He knows how to go about leading. He knows how to go about winning, and that's all heading in a positive direction.
If you guys have any questions or comments for us, leave them on our Facebook page here. We'll get to them as quickly as possible. You mentioned it too. Hugh Jackson and John Dorsey also met with the media. The first time we've heard from them in quite some time, other than the NFL scouting combine. One thing I was interested in is, now that they do have a starting quarterback in place, how does this change their draft plans? Because they do have the number 1 pick. They do have the number 4 pick. Also, you could factor Carlos Hyde into this conversation because Saquon Barkley has been talked about so much. As you heard John Dorsey and Hugh Jackson address the draft, what did you sort of take away from what they had to say?
They're still listening to deals.
Oh, I don't want to hear that.
But I think it's more for 4 and moving back to potentially 6.
Yeah.
If they move back to 12, then the whole discussion changes. But they're not they're very good at playing poker at the table. You don't want to play poker with an NFL GM or coach right now because they're saying all the right things. Look, our door's always open. We're not necessarily precluded from taking Saquon Barkley. Personally, I think quarterback is still number one.
Yeah.
They get the best quarterback in the draft, or the guy that they think is the best quarterback in the draft. And then at number 4, they go on from there, and they can deal if they want to. But I think a most pressing need right now, well, there's 2 of them now that Joe Thomas retired, but cornerback is still the most pressing need at 4 because I don't think there's a left tackle worthy of that number 4 spot. If they trade out of 4 and go down to 12 and 22, then a left tackle's coming off the board. That's the conversation to have. But I think it's quarter and corner at 1 and 4.
Yeah. Rob Townsley chiming in saying, love these trades and free agent signings. I think one of these trades actually that's kind of flown under the radar because Tyrod is that quarterback name is Jarvis Landry.
Yep.
This is a legitimate Pro Bowl wide receiver. He's made the Pro Bowl each of the last 3 years. He's had 100 receptions each of the past 3 years, 100 or more receptions. He's not that downfield guy. He is pretty much a pure possession slot wide receiver. But when it comes to doing that job, he does it better than just about anybody in the NFL.
Most catches in the NFL over the last 4 years, over 400 receptions.
Yeah, I mean, this is a playmaker. This is a dependable wide receiver that the Browns just haven't had in quite some time. As you listen to him talk, I know his enthusiasm for coming to Cleveland was something that really stood out to you. But I am curious. He's coming here on that franchise tenure. What do you think about the Browns in talks of a long-term contract with Jarvis Landry?
I think it's a fantastic thing if they can get it done. Look, they know they're going to have to pay Josh Gordon something down the road. It's going to be at least a year through 2018 that they don't have to worry about it. So signing Jarvis now long-term will kind of stem that tide a little bit. And John Dorsey even addressed that in the press conference when he was asked about why go for Taylor with a trade over free agent and Cousins. And he's like, look, if you sign a guy to a huge deal, it impacts what you're able to do. Like, he flat out said it. Like, without saying it, he said, I've watched other teams go through salary cap hell. And now, without having to do that, you get a guy like Jarvis Landry in a trade, and then you're able to extend him.
Yeah.
And that makes the blow a little bit less severe. I think that's the ultimate goal, is to get him in the fold long term. Is it going to cost a pretty penny? Yeah, but where they're at right now, it actually is a good thing because they can afford to get that first year out of the way and then move on to years 2, 3, and 4 of that contract where it's going to be even less severe on the salary cap.
Yeah, and I do wonder, this probably isn't the best time to be signing a long-term contract with a wide receiver when you look at the deals that Sammy Watkins and Allen Robinson and even some lesser names have gotten. Jarvis Landry, from a production standpoint, is head and shoulders above all those guys.
He's going to get paid.
He's going to get paid. It's just a matter of, do you want to do that now, or do you want to wait till a year from now and maybe the wide receiver market settles a little bit? But
I don't know how it works in the NFL about franchising and whatnot, but the Browns could go that route too and extend it another year. I think they'd have 2 more years where they could do it because he was already franchised once. But then you're talking about paying him top 5 of his position and then top 5 player money.
Yeah.
And then that gets a little pricey.
You might be paying that for him anyways.
But the options are there.
Right. And you don't have to make that long-term commitment. I mean, that's what Washington did with Kirk Cousins. The free agents were there as well. Carlos, they were signing their deals and then pretty much being ushered into the press room.
Oh, man, yeah.
They were literally signing their deals and then meeting with the media. Carlos Hyde, let's start with him because he's a Buckeye.
Oh, Carlos is going to be a very important part of this offense. When Hugh Jackson was asked about it, he kind of lit up. He's like, man, that guy's a downhill runner. He's a violent runner, which basically means he looks to run through people. He doesn't dance. He's not a stop and go, stutter step kind of guy. He's I'm just going to run through you and there's nothing you can do about it kind of guy. He bounces off of tackles. All of that is very good for an offense that had a lot of issues with running back over the last few years. Crow couldn't seem to hammer it in for the short yardage situations, which is why Deshaun Kaiser had to pass so much in the red zone. And then Duke is very limited what he can do between the tackles because he is that shifty back that doesn't have as much brawn on him. Carlos Hyde is a big dude. When he walks into the room, you're like, whoa, okay, that's a legit running back. That's a guy that can pound the rock.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what he's going to do for the Browns.
I covered him at Ohio State, his 2 years there where he was the starting running back. And there were times I actually I thought he was almost a more valuable weapon to have at times than Ezekiel Elliott, who came after him, because he would just fall forward and get 8 yards. Like,
right.
he is just a guy he is actually better running out of the shotgun, and we saw this at Ohio State, than he is out of a traditional I formation or single back set. If he's running out of a shotgun, which he'll be doing a lot with Tyrod Taylor, who also enhances your running game's ability, I really like Carlos Hyde's potential in this offense. And yeah, I mean, just what he can bring to the table, obviously, there's a reason Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley are excited about that. And another free agent signing that caught my eye and caught all our eyes is Chris Hubbard. And I think this was pretty revealing that when they signed Chris Hubbard, based on the money they signed him to, because of when he signed, things from our perspective were still up in the air with Joe Thomas. We didn't know if he was coming here to be a left tackle or right tackle, but it sounds like he is firmly entrenched in that right tackle role, and that means that the first guy to get the shot at left tackle to replace having the enviable task to replace Joe Thomas is going to be Sean Coleman.
Yeah, he's going to get the first crack at it. Donald Stevenson could be in the mix. Spencer Drango could be in the mix as well. But I think it's going to be Sean Coleman's job to lose, and even John Dorsey cited this yesterday. Joe Thomas he's a Brown for life as long as he wants to be. And how about this? A couple days after retiring, instead of taking his family on a nice vacation or going back home to Wisconsin and working on his land, he was in the field house teaching Sean Coleman the finer points of playing left tackle. That speaks volumes about the man, and that speaks volumes about Sean Coleman's potential, because Joe Thomas is not going to work with somebody he doesn't think can fill that void.
Yeah.
And he went out there, and on his off time, he tried to help Sean as best as he can, and I think that's going to be the first of many times that he spends with Sean Coleman in the field house, trying to go over the finer points of hand placement, foot placement, just drop back. How do you handle everything? I think it's going to be good for Coleman, and it might be kind of therapeutic for Joe to get the game out of his system a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree, and he's talked about it in interviews, and reporters are coming out now and saying that that's who Joe thinks is his long-term successor at left tackle. Speaking of Joe Thomas, wrapping things up here, a couple of things I wrote on WKYC.com today. One, he took a full-page ad out in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, thanking the city of Cleveland, his friends, his family, media members.
That doesn't happen often.
No, it really doesn't, but, I mean, you can see it there. You wouldn't expect anything less from Joe, but pretty cool nonetheless.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be putting up another paper in a frame in my basement, in my man cave, right next to the Ohio State National Championships and Mariano Rivera's thank you, Mo. That's high class from Joe. You would expect nothing less. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that gave his heart and soul for 11 seasons, and the fans gave it right back to him. I mean, there was a definite love between the fans and Joe Thomas, and I think it really goes back to the first day he became a Brown, when he was on the fishing boat with his dad.
Yeah.
Pardon the pun, I know it's bad, but that had everybody hooked right from the start. I mean, Joe was a fan favorite for life, and he did nothing but build up that credibility throughout 11 years of top-level football. And also, the thing that doesn't get recognized as much is his ability to connect with the community outside of football. A lot of people don't know this, but Joe, for the past number of years, and his wife Annie, would go to a Kids in Need Resource Center and help teachers buy supplies for their students that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. Joe, the son of a teacher in the Wisconsin school districts, always felt that connection and wanted to help others. And he did that along with co-chairing the Greater Cleveland Food Bank's biggest fundraiser of the year with the Taste of the Browns, the Cleveland Browns First Energy Stadium. And he really just endeared himself to the community the more he was here. And it was a beautiful thing to see the relationship and the bond that he formed. And it's nice to see the recognition of appreciation on his part, because we don't always get that. And he was 100% honest in everything he said. And Unfiltered Joe is just continuing to build fan bases across the world.
Absolutely. And then one last thing I wrote today on WKYC.com. The Browns don't have a face of the franchise anymore. It's not Joe Thomas. For the first time since 2006, they'll have a new left tackle. They'll have a new face of the franchise. I went over some of the options. I think Myles Garrett stands out, obviously.
Yeah.
The guy who Joe Thomas used to go up against in practice, at least for a brief period of time. The number 1 overall pick of 2018, whoever it may be, whether it's Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, or Josh Rosen. Tyrod Taylor, if things work out, he said he wants to bridge the Browns to a Super Bowl, right? So if that happens, I don't think
I'm walking across that bridge anytime I get a chance to.
I don't think the Browns will have any choice but to make him the face of the franchise. And then Josh Gordon, obviously, questions with him always. But sometimes the talent is just too good, right? I mean, Josh Gordon's probably the player, him and Myles Garrett right now, who when fans from other teams and other cities think of the Cleveland Browns, it's Josh Gordon and Myles Garrett in some order.
You know, the thing with Josh, he could be the face of any franchise. Yeah. The off-the-field stuff will drive every marketing director to go in the 180 opposite direction from Josh. And that's kind of unfortunate for Josh because he's a good person at heart. He has a good heart, and if you spend 5 minutes with Josh, you understand that. Just an engaging person, very soft-spoken, very productive, but he has some off-the-field issues that he's going to continue to battle throughout the rest of his career and even beyond that. But to me, it's Myles Garrett in the number 1 overall pick, especially if it's a quarterback.
Yeah.
You know that always becomes the face of the franchise. The problem is if that guy's not playing,
right,
that becomes an issue because I think in 2014 we should have learned this lesson that we named the face of the franchise in Johnny Football, and then all of a sudden Johnny no play.
Right.
And then all of a sudden when Hoyer slips up, we've got to play the face of the franchise. You do not want to get into that game. Have Myles Garrett carry the load for the year and then move on. But the Browns, regardless, are not going to be able to shake themselves from that.
Yeah, and I think, in an ideal world, Tyrod Taylor plays all 16 games. Your number 1 overall pick doesn't have to play. Myles Garrett, on the other hand, hopefully he reaches his potential, which we saw flashes of. I mean, for the limited action he played, he still had 7 sacks. He looks the part. He looked the part in preseason. He looked the part when he got a sack on his very first play.
And thank goodness he did not follow the mold of the last first-round pick that did that in Barkevius Mingo, where he got like 1 sack the rest of the season. Like, we've seen Myles Garrett do it now. Can he stay healthy enough to do it for a full season? We don't know, but the kid is athletically head and shoulders above almost anybody else on the team.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure that everybody knows who he is.
Yeah, so hopefully it's him this year, and then he's his own.
He's the bridge.
He's the bridge to the quarterback becoming the face of the franchise in 2019. But that's going to do it for today's WKYC 3-Point Play. I'm Ben Axelrod. He's Matt Florjancic. If you enjoyed the show, join us on Monday where we'll be breaking down all the latest in the Cleveland sports world.